Hello friends, hip cats, groovy chicks, welcome to the Jazz Ranch. I'm your alternate dominant man. An alternate dominant ego man, you can call me Mr. Ego if you like. And anyway, I got my mask on, and you know, things are cool here at the Jazz Ranch. We get these custom made designer. This one has piano keys on it, I hope you dig it. But anyway, you know, the KH, he wants to do another tune recorded by the great Bill Evans. And he's trying to clone him. Well, you know, he can't do that. That's impossible. You can't clone Bill Evans. You know, the best he could do is probably maybe, you know, get some information out of him and so on and use it to help his playing. But anyway, I know there's a lot of Bill Evans fans out there. He has some special tricks for you he's going to show you this evening. But anyway, you know, we even got the horses wearing masks now. Well, no, they're actually old bags, you know. We put the bag on and that's cool. But the dogs are wearing masks. And the cats too, you know. That's how it is these days. You know, we don't know what's going on. Anyway, would you tell me what day this is? I don't even know. How did it come to KH? It must be Saturday. No, I think it's Thursday. I'm trying to remember when he comes up the walk. But anyway, here he comes. And so good to see you. Bye-bye. I'm the alternate man. I'm still with you. Bye-bye.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Jazz Ranch. And the Alter Dominant Man was so excited about being able to see you again and talk to you again that he had to make an appearance. So I'm sorry about that. But anyway, he has his mask on. I don't right now, but I'm all alone here. Anyway, you know, I'm sorry. We're all going through this, and it is a very difficult time. But the best part of it is that we can practice music. And I've been hearing from you. People write to me and tell me they're watching my videos, and that's really helpful to me, and I'm glad I can reach out to you and give you something of value during this downtime. And you know, for many years I have been a Bill Evans fan since I was a young teenager even. And one of the first recordings I had of his was the Portrait in Jazz recording, and one of my favorite cuts from that was his version of Spring is Here. Now, it's very ironic because spring is here now, and yet it's kind of depressing. It's not like what we expected spring to be, even though the flowers are happy and so on, and you know, the grass is happy, we're mowing it. But you know, if you check out the lyrics to Spring is Here, Rodgers and Hart, they are kind of depressing lyrics. In other words, you know, unrequited love kind of thing. But I was always amazed by what Bill Evans did with this. And then recently I came across a transcription of it, and I tried to learn it. Well, it's pretty difficult to learn. But what I learned from it was very interesting, and I want to pass it on to you. And I'm sure there's some of you out there that may be more advanced or may have a certain kind of potential that this will grab you and will interest you. Particularly if you're a Bill Evans fan and you've listened and studied his music for many years, you will, I think, get something out of this particular video, which I did. And just the purpose of practicing for it, to try to learn how to play it and put it on YouTube. You know, I have to really practice a lot for this because it was a new technique I had to learn. So I'm gonna give that to you now. So here we go with a beautiful song called Spring is Here, Rodgers and Hart, and Bill Evans' interpretation of it. I'm not cloning him, I'm just giving you my take on his arrangement. Here we go. Now, starting out, I'm not going to analyze this song measure by measure and look at every chord and everything he's doing. It would take too much time. It'd take an hour and a half. So I'm just going to talk about a couple of central things, a couple of chords that he uses that are unusual, particularly at the beginning of the song and also during an interlude before the solo. So, as a review, I want to talk about seventh chords that are used in jazz, your traditional ones, and then a couple of what I would call hybrids that he uses. So the first one, of course, is C major 7. Then you have C, I'm going to put it in the key of C. C dominant 7th, all dominant. The minor 7, the minor 7 flat 5, or the half diminished, also it's called. And then the full diminished 7th, which Barry Harris calls the diminished 6. That diminished chord there. So now, you know, you really need to learn all the inversions of them to understand how they work, but like this, but, and so on. Now, there are two chords that are not in that 5-chord system that are unusual and that show up in various tunes, and you may have used them, you may not have, but Bill Evans uses both of them in this song quite a bit. The first one is like a major 7 interval, but with a minor triad. So you have the minor major 7. See, so we have that sound. If you invert it, you know, you we get some pretty unusual sounding chords. And the other one that's even more striking is the diminished chord with the major 7. You see? So you get that sound. Now you can play, you know, you can invert them, or you can play them in a scale or whatever. And that's what he does. He plays sort of a scale around those chords. But he's really mastered these 2 chords, and he plays them in a very unique way on this song. Now we're in the key of A flat. So I'm going to show you what he does at the beginning of the song and how he uses these 2 particular, what I call hybrids, these 2 particular unusual 7th chords. Now, like I said in the beginning, this is advanced theory. These are advanced concepts, and actually I had to study this, and I didn't understand it until I had read the score, and then I'd always listened to this song and loved the way he played on it, but I didn't really know what he was doing until I saw the score, and then I tried to figure out. I like to analyze things. So I talked about the minor major 7. I talked about the diminished major 7. Now if you go to A flat, take the major 7 chord now, make it minor, so you have that sound. You know, this song is in key of A flat, so you have to use that chord. And then for the diminished, you would have this sound. Now, the first chord in this song is an A flat diminished, which would be this, normally, like we'd say. Now, you may ask, well, why is that note in there? Well, that's in the scale, but it's not in the chord, you see? But it's in the scale, which is this. So that's the first thing that's unusual about this song, that it starts on a note that doesn't fit the chord that it begins with, but it is part of the scale of that chord. So, and it's a beautiful sound, and then it resolves right away like this, right to an A flat major. So you have a diminished chord, 2 major chords. So now what does Bill Evans do? He takes that chord, which is the diminished, and he creates movement within it like that. Now what is he doing? He's actually playing on a scale like this. You know, which you could call an altered dominant scale. It's starting on the half step and then the whole step. But that's a diminished scale, no matter how you figure it. So he's got that. He hears that, you know, and he's got all the notes in there that are the right notes. So that's the note in, you know, that's just an inversion, right, of this. So how he hears that, I don't know, but he has this. And then he resolves it to the A flat chord. And then he goes. And that's pretty easy to understand, right? It's right in root position, and it goes right up the scale tones. Now the next chord now is a D minor 7 flat 5. What does he do? He inverts it, which makes it sound like an F minor with a major 7, and he's got this. You see, so he's playing up that scale using that chord and that sound, and the melody's just the same. It goes and it repeats. Now, how ingenious is that? First one is this. Now we go to the D minor half diminished. Now here it becomes a D flat. So now he's going to invert it and make it a minor triad with a major 7th. So he's using an A flat, you see, which is substituting for the D flat. It's really a form of a D flat. In other words, it's got the 9, it's got a sharp 11 up there, and then he goes like this. You see, you have to get that. This is very tricky. You have to get it exactly right or it won't sound right. So he's inverting it perfectly there. And then back to the A flat major, like that. So that passage, those 4 measures are 4 of the most beautiful and ingenious measures I've ever heard anyone play in terms of chords and melody and the subtlety and how sublime it is, how beautiful it is. Okay, so Bill Evans, he has this beautiful bass line that goes chromatic. Now like this. And then resolves to A flat there. But how do you conceive of this thing? Well, it's genius. It's pure genius. That's all it is. You know, and there you have, you know, that fits that scale, right? A diminished scale against the E, or half dominant scale against the alter dominant scale against the E. So it's like we're just playing inversions of it, and then he resolves it to down another half step. Now this one, right? That's the minor, but inverted up here. That's beautiful. And then here, and then this one. Now that took me a long time to figure out how to play that, and I'm sure it will take you too, but the most talented people out there that are listening to this will get it pretty quickly, I'm sure. But to have even thought of that or conceived of it, I mean, this is on a level of genius that is equivalent to, you know, Chopin's etudes, Shakespeare's, you know, writings, Emerson. I mean, this is just as great as any of the great artists in the world have given us. That Bill Evans has given us this incredible, beautiful interpretation of a wonderful song. It is. Now, before I get into the part that is the most interesting part of this song, and the most unusual, and the most challenging and inventive part of it, which is the interlude before his solo, I want to talk a little bit, just touch on a couple of points. In other words, he starts out with these, you know, rather complex voicings, but then he goes into something that is so simple. In other words, Bill Evans has mastered not only the complex, but the simple, the sublime, you know, the most sublime things and the most complex things. He has that tremendous scope, not only within his harmonic sense, but within his touch and within his dynamics and his phrasing. I mean, all of that is absolute perfection. So when he gets after that passage at the beginning, first four measures, then he goes to this. Then he goes to something that is so simple as this. This is a C minor 7 flat 5. He plays it like that. Just two notes. Resolving to an F, and he just goes to the third of the F there, and then to the seventh of the next chord, which is the B flat minor 7. Then he does this beautiful little figure that goes like this. You know, it's absolute perfection. I mean, it's E flat, but it ends up with a flat 5 and a 13 there. And then it becomes more complex with chords and so on. Then he does this thing that's so unusual here on the D flat major. He does this. That's kind of like a Barry Harris thing, right? You know, a diminished 6th scale, and then it repeats it here. You know, and then the rising line. There's a lot to talk about in this song, but I want to go to two central things and then keep it short. So the next central thing for me is the interlude. So now what Bill Evans does on the end of the chorus, the end of the song, going into the solo part, and it's usually a 2-bar or 4-bar pattern. In this case, it's 2 bars, and it's just a turnaround. You know, like you end up right. A 1-6-2-5 or 3-6-2-5. Well, he goes to the 5 chord as a suspension, you know, which he uses this a lot, but then he does this unusual chord progression in which he does these. Now, what he does is he's actually using these major 7th chords that are diminished. And the way I had to learn them is I couldn't play the chord in my right hand because of my bent finger, but And he's actually playing it like this. So he's doubling the melody, and he has this, and he does it up here, so. But actually what it is, like, is a diminished chord with a major seventh in it, so you'd have this. Now that's pretty difficult to play because I'm so used to playing a root on the bottom. You know, this is like raising the root. In other words, it looks like a G chord, right? That's just a G chord. But if you play it with the G on the bottom, if you raise the root, now you have a diminished chord with a major seventh on top. Now, maybe it's easier to play it for you to play it as a major seventh and just double the, like he played it, like that. But for me, I couldn't do that because of the bent finger, so I had to play it like this. So the way I was able to accomplish playing it was to understand it in terms of something that's very unusual for me. In other words, to play a G chord, but put not the root in the bottom, but a half step higher, the A flat. So that's how I conceived of it. And basically it does get the sound, even though it doesn't have that note in there. It's not as dissonant as having the root doubled, I mean the melody note doubled. But you have the sound of the chord, which is so unusual, and it has so much tension, and it really is that, we're in E flat, right? So we're in A flat, so it is that, you know, it is that. Now he changes it here, he goes, now he changes the scale here. He goes to C over D flat. That's a different scale, right? First one is this one. It's that scale, that diminished scale. Then it goes to another diminished scale. That's it. And then it goes back to the original one here. This is like pretty heavy stuff. Yeah, there it is. You see? So this is something that I'm turning you on to that I learned, and it took me years. I've been listening to this song for 40 years at least, and never had been able to figure this out. Thanks to someone who transcribed it, now I'm laying it on you. I'm giving it to you. Now what you do with it is up to you. But the thing is, the more knowledge you have, the more you understand about music, particularly if you're a Bill Evans fan, this will give you some insight into some of his higher level, what I would say higher level understanding of music that I never really had been able to figure out before. So it goes to show you now it doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are, whatever age you are, there are incredible things that you're going to learn if you work at it. If you continue to work and continue to learn and continue to practice, you are going to learn so many things, and you have so much potential as young people to learn so much more than I could. So if you're out there, please write to me. I'm going to continue this lesson. It's not going to be over. I'm going to do another series on it if I get enough response from this. But I'm going to lay this out for you. You're going to understand what he's doing, and you're going to understand something that is incredible in great depth and that only Bill Evans could have figured out. So there you have the master. Signing off from the Jazz Ranch. Thanks so much for joining me this evening. I'd love to hear from you. Please write to me. I always try to respond to all my comments if you give me time. And until next time, I won't say stay safe, be well. I'm going to say swing loose, be cool. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.